some names from the last session. I'm not sure that if everybody here attended the first part or not. If you didn't, that's okay. If you did, that's great. I look forward to hearing a little bit about the process that you went through since we met last. So my name is Michelle Hurlburt. I'm a life and executive coach at Keep It Simple Coaching and Consulting. I started Keep It Simple last year in July, so I'm coming up on a year, almost a year ago now. And Keep It Simple Coaching Consulting is a business that really focuses on helping people live aware, authentic lives and how to lead their lives in an aware, authentic manner. I had been thinking about being a coach for quite a long time and finally took the leap last year. And really it stems from my desire to be a coach and my desire to do things like this. Is that part of it is that I'm an educator by trade. I have a teaching degree. I work in our local regional center for education here in Yarmouth and the Tri-County area. And this is something that really fits right up my alley. I believe in the power of self-awareness and understanding, you know, how we're doing what we're doing, why we're doing what we're doing, and find out core values and really actioning our behaviors and how we show up in the world with those values and with the intentions that we want to show up with, and ultimately so that we can lead an aware, authentic life, but that one that gives us meaning and purpose and fulfillment and satisfaction. And that's something I'm very passionate about helping other people do. And so again, I welcome you. I'll give a quick recap to what the last session was like. But I would love to hear where you're from, like if you want to introduce yourself and say your name and where you're from, just to do quick introductions, and then we can move on. If you're more comfortable in the chat, feel free to type in the chat. But if you're comfortable opening up the mic and giving us your name and where you're from, that would be great. Love to hear who's in the room.
Hi, I'm James with Green Oil. Glad to be here.
Hi, Michelle. Hi, others. My name's Robin Warrior, and I'm with Warrior Tech.
Yeah, great. Welcome.
Hi, Michelle and everyone. My name is John Wall. I'm a newcomer to Yarmouth. Probably I met you, Michelle, a few months back when I came to the Ignite. Originally, I was from Vietnam. I came to Canada 2 years ago. I went to Dalhousie for a degree in e-commerce. And since I moved here, I didn't expect the COVID-19 happen. So it has disrupted my whole life and family and business planning and employment planning, etc. Through Ignite and other programs, I love to connect to everyone to see if I can help or I can contribute anything to the local community. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thanks, John. I remember meeting you. I'm happy to see you here.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I talked to Julian Lambert, and he advised me to discuss with you.
Great.
Yeah,
Thanks, John.
Thank you.
Anybody else like to introduce themselves? And if not, that's okay. Hi, Lisa. Hi, Darlene. Hi, Ingrid. Okay, awesome. Awesome. All right, well, let's get going. Let's get rolling. Hi, Nancy. Nice to see you again. I'm going to have the chat off so that as I roll along, am not distracted by it. If there are any questions, please feel free to ask them. Oh, hi, James. Super, great. So if you'd like to put any comments or add any questions to the chat box, please feel free to do so. If Danielle and Aaron would like to kind of monitor that, if you don't mind. If there are any questions that pop up that maybe would be a good point to ask it in between, that's fine. If not, like Danielle said, there will be time at the end to do any questions and a comment to discussion period. So please feel free to use the chat box. I like to see what people are thinking, and especially at the end, I go through and I read them all. So again, welcome. So glad to have you here. And I look forward to the session and seeing how what your thoughts are. So in the first part of finding your why, I talked about the 3D life process, and the 3D life process, it has 3 Ds. And so the first part was about defining your why, finding ways to really clarify and gain some understanding of what your why truly is. And so we talked about the 5 steps to finding your why. So the session that I'm going to be doing today is also very practical. The last session had the 5 steps, which was clarifying your vision, and an exercise that went along with that, as well as you know, kind of identifying your interests and your passions and your curiosities, your core values and beliefs, and your motivations. And we talked about external and internal motivations and how they are different, and how we all have some of both. And we talked a bit about, you know, if we lean towards one side more than the other, and what that can mean to our why, and maybe to our vision as well. And then the final piece was the 5-time why drill down, and really digging down deep to find out, you know, what is that true core kind of origin of your why, and where all of the other things, where your motivations, where your core values and beliefs, where your interests and passions and curiosities and come from, at the very core of who you are. And so that's what we did last time. And this time we're looking at, you know, now we have that cognitive idea of our why. And in fact, actually, even before I go into this piece, I'm wondering if anybody who was at the last session would be interested in just sharing, you know, how did it go for you since, like, in doing the exercises, and if you're more comfortable saying in the chat box, please feel free. But you know, you don't have to share specifics if you're not comfortable, but just, do you feel like you have a clearer understanding of your why, and a clearer understanding of some of those values and beliefs and whatnot? Anybody interested in sharing their experience with the last part? And that's fine. Okay, so so today what we're talking about is, so now that we have a better understanding, a little bit more clarity on what our why truly is, now we have it up here, but then how do we action it? How do we show up in our life? How do we where do we start with choosing or doing things that show others as well as ourselves that we are living in our why, and that we're using our why to provide meaning and purpose in our lives? And so really the question is, throughout this session, is how how does your why show up in your life, in your words, in your actions, in your behaviors, in the things that you do? You know, how is your why really showing up? And so, like I said, this is a pretty practical presentation as well. There are exercises that we're going to dive right into as we go. And I would like you to be thinking about and keeping in mind as I talk about and share examples of the exercise, the things that could come up in these exercises, that you're really thinking about and how, kind of holding on to the why that you have already, and how does this relate? Because when we have that focus, what ends up happening typically is that when talking about how to deepen that and how to solidify the why a little bit stronger in our lives, we're better able to start kind of planting seeds for doing the exercises after. So not that I'm expecting you to full on like stop and reflect on everything right now, because you won't have time to do that, but really start planting those seeds and knowing, having that why kind of in the palm of your hand as we're going through these. So step one, let me move this slide along. Here we go. So step one is really about setting intentions. And when we talked about clarifying your vision, we talked about intentions in that as well. With this piece, it's really looking at, now that I have a clear idea of my why, a clearer idea of my why, and it doesn't have to be perfect. And here I've got the 2 statements that perfectly frame it. If you don't, that's okay. But now it's setting intentions for, how do I, with this why, how do I want to show up in the world? And so we have our vision. With our vision plus a greater understanding of our why, and with setting intentions for how we show up and how we action that, we actually create the action that goes along with the foundation that we've already set in part 1, and then we can move forward. And so the first exercise that you'll see is a setting intention exercise. If you are somebody who has subscribed to my Keep It Simple News email list that I send out once or twice a month, then you may have already received this exercise. But this is adding kind of a context to what you're doing with it. It's not just setting a daily intention, it's actually setting an intention for your why. And so there are 2 exercises in this step. So the first one is a setting intention exercise, which I'll show you in a moment. And the second is an exercise that an author of The Coaching Habit and the Advice Trap, his name is Michael Bungay-Stanier, he's Canadian, actually has talked about of how we show up and what we want to show up. And it pairs really well with setting an intention. So this is, the first exercise is setting a simple intention. And so this is something that I've developed with Keep It Simple. And so when we're setting a simple intention, we're really looking at, so again, remembering what our why is, we're really looking at how can I set an intention within this that is, it satisfies what my why is asking of me, or what I'm asking of my why. And so thinking of, okay, is this intention satisfying? Is it going to meet my needs in how I want to show up? I is imagine. And so in setting this intention, in choosing this intention, are you able to imagine what that looks like? Are you able to see it, feel it, hear it, what it could be, what it could look like, what it could, how others might perceive it. That visualization piece in that is important. M is for motivate. So does this intention motivate me to follow through on it? Does it motivate me to continue acting and living in and being in my why? Positive, P is positive. So is it something that I feel that good about doing? Do I feel like it's moving me in the right direction? Do I feel like it's having a positive impact on myself, but also on potentially on others, depending on what your why is? And then L, long term, is this something that's going to make a difference long term? And this is not to say that we can't have short-term intentions, but if we're thinking about our vision and what we want within the, like, over the next 10, 15 years, and what our life looks like, or who we are and who we look like in 10 or 15 years, you know, does this intention help that long-term idea, that long-term vision? And E is for evolve. Does the intention of my why, of how I'm showing up or how I want to show up in my why, does this intention help me grow? Does it help me evolve? Does it help move me closer to who I want to be and how I want my life to be? So by thinking about kind of these indicators or these qualifiers for setting the intention, we can really make sure that there's there's a good backup behind it. You have some context. You have with your why, it gives you context. These indicators give you kind of measurements to help set a strong intention for yourself. The second exercise is an exercise that, as I said, I have borrowed from Michael Bungay Stanier. He, again, is an author of The Coaching Habit and The Advice Trap, which is actually a new book that he just put out. He is Canadian. Great. If you've seen any of his videos or if you look him up, great character, great personality, just kind of one of those people that you listen to and you know that they're speaking and living from a really authentic, aware place, and genuine, just really genuine. And anyway, I love him. I think he's great. So he does this exercise, which I thought was really leaned well into the work here that we're doing. And it's called This, Not That. And it's really about kind of, he says himself that he borrowed this from the branding world. So this is an exercise that comes from a book. I don't know. I'm not 100% sure if it's a book or not, called The Branding World. But he says he got this exercise from somebody else. So this is borrowed a couple of times, but it's such a strong exercise. So it's a this, not that. And so in the first exercise, we talked about your intentions and how you set a strong intention, how you're using the simple system. With this exercise, it's really about visualizing you, and within that intention, how are you showing up? And so we often think that, you know, after a situation or after a conversation sometimes, and I know that I've done this myself, I go away and I start to process the conversation. I think, oh, why didn't I say this? Or why didn't I you know, stand up a little straighter? Why was I so intimidated? Or why was I so with this exercise, what we're really doing is we're visualizing and we're really setting an intention for how I want to be in different scenarios and different situations. Even if it's just a day-to-day usual, how do I want to walk out onto my deck in the morning, for example? So it's this, not that. So this is really an idea of when you're at your best. So if you think about a time that you felt you were at your peak, you were at your best performance, your best as a human being, your best as an athlete, whatever it may be. Think of a time when you were at your best. And this is, and then describe it, qualify it. This is what you want, and this is what you're looking for, and how you show up. Not that. So not that is really when you're kind of feeling a little mediocre, maybe substandard, maybe a little off, and you're not really on your game. And so when I did this for myself. These are examples of my own. And so I thought about times when I've been in conversations or when I've been showing up in the world where I didn't feel when I left that particular moment that I was really that I was really on my game. And so one of those times was I felt shy, or I felt nervous. But really what I wanted, if I were to go back and be able to do that again, I really wanted confidence. And so another time I was pretty flabbergasted by something, and I was speechless and said nothing, and then left the situation and thought, oh, why wasn't I able to articulate something, articulate some words, some string some things together that, you know, made some sense. So not that, speechless is not something that I want to be. I want to be articulate. I want to be able to share what I need to share in the moment. Automatic pilot, there are times where I know, and I'm sure that everybody can relate to this, when on automatic pilot, where you're just doing things, you're not thinking, you're just going through like muscle memory movements, and, you know, just reacting on the fly. And so automatic pilot isn't where I want to be in my why. It's not where my intention is meant to be. So I want to be aware. I want to remain self-aware. I want to remain mindful, and in the moment, kind of present in that time. So this is the this, not that, and this is really great for, like I said, really identifying concretely, being very specific about, if I'm going to show up at my best, this is what it looks like, not like this, not like that. And so those are two great exercises for really starting off kind of that intention setting, to give you that visual of what that looks like. Are there any questions so far, or everybody feeling okay? If I go too fast, I will be honest, I get excited about this stuff. So sometimes I can go fast because my brain's going a mile a minute. But yeah, please let me know if I'm rambling or going too quickly. So the next step is identify obstacles. And so when we think about our why and what our why is, if we're going to put it into action, we also have to be really clear on what is or has been getting in my way of putting my why into action already. You know, if this has been in me and maybe it wasn't clear enough, maybe I didn't have enough awareness of what I was doing or why I was doing it. In order to use what you know now, is you really have to get clear on what are the barriers, what's getting in my way, what has been getting in my way of me showing up the way that I want to in my why. Excuse me. So the other thing with knowing what your obstacles are is that you're better able to make a plan for managing them when they do come up, because some of them will be within our control, some of them will not
Are you
be.
hiding in the safe?
And so, oh, sorry. Here we go. So some of them will be in our control and some of them will not be within our control. And that's okay if we have a plan, if we have an idea of what we can do when we do come up against it. And so this is part of the action. This is part of actioning our why, because when we have a thought about something, and oftentimes when we discover an obstacle or the same thing keeps happening over and over again, and we generate a thought about it. And the thing about thoughts is that sometimes they're true and sometimes they're not. But what a thought does is always creates a feeling. And so if we have a thought and then we have a feeling about it, if that feeling is constructive, or if that thought is constructive and the feeling that goes along with it is constructive and or comfortable, if you feel like it moves you forward, then the action we choose to do or the behavior that follows that feeling typically is constructive or productive. The problem is when we have thoughts about things or people that generate feelings of that don't move us forward, or that give us an uncomfortable feeling, or that aren't so productive. And the reactions or the behaviors or the things that we do when those feelings come up oftentimes can get in the way of us moving forward. And by no means am I saying that we have to not feel those feelings, because all feelings are okay. We have a huge variety of feelings available to us, and we feel a lot of them. And sometimes we're aware of them and sometimes we're not. But when we have that thought, feeling, action sequence, if it's the same thing over and over and over again, what tends to then happen is we create a belief about that thing. So, and when we create a belief about something, then oftentimes we take it to be true, and it might be, but it might not. It might also not be true. So we have to kind of check into those beliefs and where they're coming from as well. So if we can change our thoughts about some things, then we can also change our feelings about them. And that's kind of where we're going with this for obstacles this time around. So if we can change our thoughts, we can change our feelings. And if we can change our feelings about it, then we can also change the actions or behaviors that come up. So the exercise for obstacles, for managing obstacles, is to really look at, what do I think about these obstacles that I have that are coming up in my life, or that are keeping me from, or I feel are keeping me from living more fully in my why. So list some obstacles in order of greatest to smallest, things that you feel are getting in the way or have been getting in the way of really living and showing up the way that you want to be in the world, and list them from greatest to smallest. Okay, so number 1, number 2, number 3. Starting with the first, write down all the thoughts you have about it. So I have an example. My own personal example is I often have the thought, time is an issue. Doesn't seem like there aren't enough hours in the day, which I'm sure we've all said, or I'm assuming, but many of us have said before, there aren't enough hours in the day to get everything done that I need to. It goes by so fast. Like I get up in the morning and poof, the day is gone. Like, where does time go? And then other thoughts that I've had, another thought that I've had about time is that, you know, my time management skills, like, is it me? Is it my time management? Maybe it's, you know, I need to work on that. You know, it's not my strong suit. Okay, so write down all the thoughts that you have. Now, remember, with the thought comes a feeling. And so if I were to use that same example of time being an obstacle for me living in my why, or getting to where I want to go in my ideal life, excuse me, my ideal self, if I'm saying time is an obstacle, then when I say the thought, it goes by too fast, I think that, and then I feel pressured. Because I'm thinking it goes by so fast, and then I'm pressured to do things faster. I'm pressured to try to accomplish more in a day, or there aren't enough hours in a day. So when I think that, my feeling typically is I feel more stressed. I feel, oh, how am I going to get all of this done? I didn't do as much as I thought I was going to do today. Okay, and then the feeling that goes along with, you know, that time management is not my strong suit. Well, that thought then kind of discourages me a little bit. I feel discouraged in that, oh, well, you know, that's my problem. And I kind of turn it back in on me. And so I get discouraged with myself because I wish that I had that skill. So, however, if I think about, for each thought, number 3, if I think about, is this true? Is it true that time goes by too fast? Is it true that there aren't enough hours in the day? Is it true that time management isn't my strong suit? And then how do I know for sure? So if I go through that process, then I can start kind of picking at, you know, what is, you know, where does that thought come from? And how do I know for sure that it's true? Then I can identify an alternative, perhaps a more helpful thought that helps shift that feeling about the obstacles. So let's say I change the it goes by too fast and feeling pressured to time is actually slower than I think. If I'm busy, then I think time goes by too fast. Maybe I'm too busy. And so if I think, no, time is slower than I think, then I feel a little bit more peaceful. There's peace that goes along with that. If I change there aren't enough hours in a day and feeling stressed about that to there are more than enough hours in the day. What would you do with 24 of them? You do have to sleep at some point. There are more than enough hours in the day. When I switch it to that, then I feel, you know what, there really are enough hours in the day, and I feel relief. If I switch the time management is not my strong suit, and I feel discouraged about that, and I switch it to, I can prioritize my time. I can figure things out to make time more valuable each day. Then I feel, rather than feeling discouraged, I feel more disciplined. I feel more in control of that. And so when I change those thoughts, I change my feelings, then the obstacle isn't quite as huge in that case, okay? And then I can create a plan for dealing with it the next time it pops up. So if I start to think, oh gosh, wow, there's not enough time, and now I meant to do this and this and this today, I can then say, hey, whoa, wait a minute. Remember, there is enough time. Remember, you can prioritize. Remember you can make it slower. I can slow it down. And so that really helps me develop a small, simple plan that can help me move forward with my with dealing and managing the obstacles that come up. So that's just one example, but it gives an idea of really what we say to ourselves, and the language that we use is so important to how we feel about something, and that's about anything, not just with obstacles. And so that's the second exercise for setting those intentions. Set the intention. Oh, sorry, I went back too far. With managing the obstacles. My apologies. So the next step is really about determining your mindset. And so in this 3D life, like this is the design phase of the 3D life. And so by setting intentions, by identifying obstacles, you know, with the designing piece, we're really finding actions, we're really finding ways that we can show up in our lives in our why and live in our why. So the next step is just determining mindset. And so really, you know, what is your mindset? And when there's a lot of research and a lot of things out there, information, blogs, things that deal with mindset and focus on mindset. But generally, I look at it from this perspective. And Carol Dweck is a psychologist and has a book called Mindset, and it's Mindset, the New Psychology of Success. And so as a researcher, what she found, she discovered the growth mindset or the fixed mindset. And so as a young researcher, she wanted to study failure and how people cope with failure. And so she set up a study that looked at how children do puzzles, and how as the puzzles got progressively more difficult, how they coped with it. And so one at a time, she brought kids into a room, and she gave them easy puzzles to start off with, and then she gave them more difficult, and then she gave them really challenging ones. And she was surprised by one 10-year-old boy who came in, and he had a really hard puzzle in front of him, and he rubbed his hands together, she said, with glee, while he was struggling to do the puzzle, and he's saying, I love a challenge. And it kind of threw her for a loop, because she was expecting when you're encountering failure, you know, do they shut down? Are they disappointed? Do they continue? Do they stop? But she was really surprised by the fact that he was loving it. And so really the growth mindset looks at that our intelligence and our personality traits and our skills are not fixed and are not set in stone, and that just what we're born with does not mean that has to be our lot. And so she says the view that you adopt for yourself profoundly affects the way you lead your life. And so on the other hand, there's the fixed mindset, which is really it's more of a static. This is what I believe. I don't believe that it can be moved. I don't think I can change this. So that's the difference between the growth and the fixed. So just using some words that she uses in her book, you know, believing you are carved in stone is the fixed mindset, and it really creates an urgency to prove yourself over and over and over again. And we tend to evaluate ourselves, if we live more in the fixed mindset, we tend to evaluate ourselves kind of in binary terms. We're either this or that. So for example, and these are some things that, these are some examples that she used in her book. So we're either a success or we're a failure. We're either dumb, we're either accepted or we're rejected. So, but what happens in the fixed mindset when we have that either or, that binary evaluation of ourselves, what happens is that there's no in between. There's no room for growth, and some will accept their lot in life, and that's where they feel that that's all that they can achieve, or that's all that they can do. So there's a lot of self-judgment that can come from that. And so whereas the growth mindset is really just, when we have the growth mindset, we really feel that this is just the starting point. This is just where we can begin to develop. It's really based on that we can cultivate our efforts, we can cultivate strategies, we can get help from others, and which lends itself to more self-attunement. And when we're self-attuned and we know ourselves and we're able to accept that we don't know everything and that that's okay, or that we don't have to be everything and that's okay, then we lean a little more towards a growth mindset. And so I liken growth mindset and fixed to an abundance mindset or a scarcity mindset. And so if you lean a little more growth and abundance, then you're really thinking that, okay, there are things that I can do, there are things that I can change. I have strengths, I have things that I can offer and give, and I can ask for help. And there's enough to go around for everybody. That there's enough in this world, there's enough in this life. There's, I'm happy for people who are doing well or whatnot. Whereas the fixed kind of lends itself to the scarcity mindset, where if we think that nothing changes, or that we're kind of static in where we're at, and that there's nothing we can do about it, or there's nothing that we can change, then we tend to lean more towards a scarcity mindset as well, because then we start to worry about, well, is there enough? Is there, will this, if somebody else gets something, does that mean that I lose? If somebody else, so we're really threatened potentially by other people's success or other people's gains, even though that might not be the case at all, that loss, that sense of loss, or that sense of lack is there. And so when we think about these mindsets, we're really all a bit of both. There are areas in our lives where we can say, yeah, I'm definitely growth and abundant mindset here, and I know that I can make changes here, and I know that there's enough to go around. But then there are other beliefs and other minds, other parts of ourselves that are really more fixed and more judgment oriented, and more scarcity based. So the activity is really just a simple mindset checklist, and it's really looking at what your thoughts are on what challenges, how you approach challenges in life. Do you embrace them? Do you say, hey, what am I going to learn about from this? What am I going to get from this? When I make it through, what am I going to learn? Or do you avoid challenges? Are they more of a hindrance? Are they more scary? Are they more, feeling that I can't do this? I'm not strong enough, or I'm not good enough, or so on and so forth. Growth, abundance, persistence is a sign of, even when things are hard, even when things are maybe not the way that we want them to be, or that they're challenging, like the difficult puzzle, but we persist, we keep going, we keep trying, or on the fixed and scarcity side, do we give up easily? Is it, put some effort in and say, you know what, this isn't for me, I'm not going to continue. And then on that note, do you enjoy the effort? Is it something like it? Do you learn from the effort? Do you learn from the process? Do you enjoy the journey? You know, the outcome is the outcome, but people with growth mindset or that abundance mindset are, you know, I really want to do this. I really want to put a lot of effort in and see what happens and see what I learn. Whereas on the fixed and scarcity side, we resist the effort. And it's, oh, there's so much work to do, or there's so much of this to do, or there's those people that I have to deal with. Whatever it may be, is the effort resisted? Do you appreciate and learn from feedback? Useful feedback. There is such a thing as unuseful feedback. That typically tends to be high bouts of criticism without a lot of constructiveness added in. But appreciate and learn from feedback. Are you able to accept feedback and say, you know what, I've got some nuggets from it. These I see I can work with. You know, maybe other pieces weren't so much my thing, but appreciate it. Or do you feel judged by or ignored, or do you ignore feedback? You know, if somebody makes a comment, says, hey, you know, you did a great job over here. I really enjoyed what you did with the place. I'm wondering if maybe you had another color that you might go with, just as an example. How do you respond to that? Are you, oh, yeah, I never thought of that color? Or are you, oh, well, this is my color. Like, I like this color. You don't like this color? Sometimes if we're defensive, that can come back to that feeling of being judged. Are you inspired by other successes? And I mentioned this in the last slide. Or are you threatened by others' success? And, you know, do you see people who are doing things that, you know, as part of your vision, but maybe you're not there yet, or you have sympathetic joy for those who are doing well in their life because you know that they've probably worked very hard to get there? Or do you feel threatened in that if there's not enough, if they're really successful, then how am I going to get there? How am I going to do that? And then kind of with that abundance in mind too, and that there's enough for everybody to go around. And this is something that I had heard when I first started coaching. You know, there's people think about competition, and not just in coaching, but in any business or any, you know, and I think I read this somewhere that, well, how many kinds of bread are on the store shelves? There are what, 13, 14 plus probably different kinds of bread out there, you know, and those businesses are still going. There's enough for everybody. With over 7 billion people in the world, there are enough people out there, for example, to have an audience, to have to make a business, to as long as, you know, you're speaking from the heart and speaking authentically. And that goes with anything. There's enough water in the world. It just seems to be in different places, or it's controlled by different places, or there are ways to get water to places in the world, but it's money, people who's controlling the money. There's enough. So if we think that way, then we're leaning more towards the abundant mindset. If we think that there's a general sense of lack, there's not enough this, there's not enough that, how am I supposed to, you know, how am I supposed to make enough money to pay all my bills when there aren't a lot of jobs? And there might not be a lot of jobs, but if the mindset is there that there's a lack, then that again kind of leans us back into the idea of their thoughts. Well, if we think there's a lack, then we feel there's a lack, and we believe there's a lack, and so our actions will continue to support that. So this is just a quick checklist exercise that you can do to kind of get an idea. And again, everybody has some of both in different areas, depending on what our thoughts and what our beliefs are about certain things. The next step is to take a look at habits. And so looking at helpful habits and unhelpful habits or routines. And again, we're really looking at, how do I put my why into action? How am I showing up in the world? What things am I doing? Or what things am I saying? Or what things am I, who's in my life that really promote and support my why, and really put action behind it. And so when we think about our habits and routines, your helpful habits and routines help move you toward your intentions and into your why and into your vision. And they help you show up there as who you want to be. The unhelpful habits and routine kind of take you off track, and they kind of keep you away from really who you want to be, or how you want to show up in the world, and what you want to be doing. And so there are a few books that I've read that I highly recommend. They're great books on habits, and making some changes, shifting some things, but also recognizing which ones are really strengths of yours. And we'll talk about that in a minute too. So James Clear he wrote the book called Atomic Habits. And one of the things that I took, like kind of the big idea for me from that book, was start small, small, small. So if we are looking to change a habit, then starting off really small and starting off like in the smallest of ways. So let's say you're looking to exercise more, for example. Then having your sneakers beside the door already in the morning is very helpful. And that's a very small thing to do, but it's one thing that moves you closer to that intention. Oh, thanks, Robin. I don't know if I caught you or not. Oh, thanks for being here. I appreciate it. Have a great day. So start small, small, small. And really the focus of this exercise isn't about what we're changing, but recognizing what's really helping us. We're going to focus on the strengths that you already have. So James Clear, Atomic Habits, great book. Another book called The Power of Habit is written by Charles Duhigg. It's Duhigg. And this is true across the board, but he talks about that there's no quick fix to changing a habit, that there is a process, and he has a process that he recommends in the book, but there's no quick fix. And so if we're looking at being compassionate to ourselves and having some understanding that some of these habits and some of these things that we might want to change have been with us for a very long time, so they're not just going to change overnight. So there's no quick fix to changing a habit. Not that you can't, of course, it's not a doom and gloom. And then Stephen R. Covey has the book, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And he talks about, there are 7 habits, of course, but one of the one habit that really lends itself well to actioning your why and living in your why in this session is put first things first. And so prioritizing and really making sure that we can effectively manage and what we're doing and how we're doing it and when we're doing it. And because now that you have more understanding of like your vision, you're more clear on your vision, you're more clear on your why, then we can really start to manage ourselves, which is part of the action, that self-management piece. We're better able to self-manage like more clearly and with intention. And so it really, I'm hoping that people like that you're seeing how this all kind of weaves together. It's not just do this, do this, do this, do this. They really link and they really interlock with one another, and they support, all of these exercises support what you're doing. in order to, and I think I saw. Thanks, James. Have a great day. So what is the exercise? Let me see, let's move this. So what I'd like you to consider is, what I invite you to consider is, when looking at your habits and your routines, what is working? What habits and what routines do you have that when you think about your vision, you think about your intentions within it, you think of even the obstacles and your mindset, what is actually helping you show up in your why that you're already doing? Okay, so I did this one just to give an example for myself, just to have you hear what it sounds like. So some of the things that I do that I know are helpful, it's working for my why, it helps me live within it, it helps me show up in the way that I want to show up in the world for myself and for others. So, for example, getting enough sleep is something that I do. I try to do every night. Sometimes the brain doesn't shut off very well, but most of the time I get enough sleep. It's something that for me is a routine that works for me. I wake up early, I drink lots of water, I exercise or I do some movement most days. Doesn't always end up being an everyday thing, but it's certainly an intention I have to do it as often as I can each day. Eating foods that fuel me, not fill me, is another thing that helps me live in my why. Creating a weekly schedule, meditating, spending time in nature or gardening or golfing and with friends and family, prioritizing time, so that kind of comes back to that weekly schedule, and reading and ongoing learning. Those are, for me, some of what helps me live in my why and show up in the ways that I want to show up in the world. What does work against me, however, are other habits that I have or other routines that I have, particularly if I'm feeling overtired or particularly stressed or overwhelmed. So if I mismanage money, I spontaneously buy something that I really don't need, or that kind of throws me off. If I have too much coffee in the day to sleep well, if I snack too much before I go to bed, sometimes I end up putting tasks ahead of like people, like other things going on in my life and people. Sometimes I make excuses. Sometimes I've blamed others, like I said, in that particularly tired or overwhelmed or stressed state. That's my reaction. Sometimes I complain, sometimes I procrastinate. Another one that works against my why is sour cream and bacon chips. Bane of my existence. Love them, crunchy, fabulous, but they work against me. So when I know what's working for me, I've identified my strengths, I know what works for me, and I know what isn't working for me and how I want to show up in life. It helps me be more aware of what my strengths are. And so when I'm more aware of what my strengths are, what habits and routines really work and help me live in my why and help me action it, then I can do more of that. And when I do more of those things that help me action my why and help me move me toward my intentions and my vision, then there's less time for the ones that don't move me toward that. And so awareness is really important, which is part of knowing what your habits and routines are. Again, not saying that, as I said before, that we have to change every little thing that we're doing that doesn't move us. It's more about looking at like that strengths-based approach. What am I doing well? how do I do more of it? If I do more of it, then I have less time to do the others. So step 5, we're going to design the first steps. So looking at what small steps can you take to start acting on your why. So in identifying all of those things beforehand, so doing steps 1 to 4, you're actually creating a foundation for, you have a clearer idea of what you're already doing, what you're already actioning, and you're focusing on the strengths of that. And when we're focused on the strengths, we're really creating thoughts in our minds that are creating feelings in our bodies and in our minds that will move us forward, that will give us more constructive, more positive actions to move forward with. So for this exercise, I call it the small step plan. And so it's really focusing on just a few things. And you can even chunk it, you can even bring it down smaller than this. For the purpose of today's presentation, I did 3, but it doesn't have to be all 3 at the same time, okay? So the small step plan. So thinking about what you're already doing, what your intentions are from the first exercise, what your this, not that looks like. What are the top 3 things that you're doing that really help you live in your why? So again, focusing on the strengths, focusing on what you're already doing. That's easy, right? So the top 3 things. And so for me, I said getting enough sleep was 1, prioritizing weekly tasks, and my morning routine. Those are probably my top 3 things that help me move toward and live more within my why. It's aligned with my intentions, and it's aligned with this is how I show up, not this. The second part is, where else could these, like getting enough sleep, for example, where else could each of those top 3 things already that you're already doing, where could they show up each day? In what other areas could they show up in? So if I think about, if I get enough sleep, then that's going to also show up in the quality of my relationships and how I present to people, how I talk to people, how I listen to them or and understand them. Because when I look at the 3rd scroll on the at the end, what does it look like, sound like, and feel like to show up in your why in each of these areas? So if I get enough sleep, it's going to impact my relationships and how I show up in my relationships each day. And what does that look like, sound like, feel like? Well, I'm more patient, I'm more understanding, I'm aware, I'm in the moment with them because I'm not tired, and I can learn more about them, and I can hear what they're saying and hear what they need and what they want. So strengths-based, what are you already doing? Where else are those things, or where else can those things show up in your life? And then what does that look like? Kind of design what that looks like, so that you can see the correlation between them. And when you're doing that scenario design, really consider some of those obstacles that you had identified beforehand and what your mindset is within each. Are some of the obstacles that you identified in the second step, are these areas, are these scenarios where maybe one or 2 of those obstacles might come up? And then identify your mindset within those so that you can really get a clear picture on what it looks like, what it sounds like, and how you're feeling within that, to live in your why and to really step up and take action in that. So all of these things are really about looking at and clarifying again, what I'm already doing, but increasing those strengths, allowing those strengths to be the ones that I focus on so that I'm able to do them more. And by doing them more, I have less time to do the others that aren't moving me forward. All right, I think I saw a chat pop up. Oh, Ingrid, she's gone. Okay. And all right. Next step, next part. Oh, so the last exercises, all the exercises that I've presented today are really about designing the action steps to your why, really getting clear on how you want to show up in the world, what you intend, what your intentions are, how you visualize it, and all of these can be are considered. And really, when you think about the strengths and the things that you're already doing, celebrate them, because those are huge, and those are great things to focus on when you're looking at how do I do this more, and where else can this show up in my life. But also, thinking about that vision, thinking about the why, thinking about your intentions, considering the obstacles that are going to come up, because there are always obstacles. There are always things that come up in life that either we expect or are unexpected. So how are we managing those? That's action. And planning for that is important. And sometimes things happen that are unexpected and we can't plan for them. But if we know what our mindset is, we know what our intentions are, we know what our strengths are and how we can show up, then it makes those obstacles a little bit more manageable. Excuse me. So action also comes from your mindset, and action comes from within your habits and your routines. And if you think about the more that you focus on these things and actioning your why, what you're really doing is you're creating new thoughts, which are then creating feelings, different feelings about these things, and then you're creating belief, because you're moving forward, you're stepping into and acting on in a way that you want to be in the world, and that you want your life to look like and be like. And so you're really increasing your belief in you and your abilities and your capabilities and your mindset and your intentions of what you want in your life. And that gives you a powerful sense of control, and understanding of yourself and your vision. So next month, I thank you for listening. I know that it's about 1:15 right now, so I feel like I've just spilled a lot. So thank you for listening. Thank you for being here today. Next month, there's one more part to the 3D Life series, and that's Defy. And so part 1 was Define, part 2 today was Design, and next time is Defy, which is really about considering some of those obstacles that you've identified in these exercises. Sometimes stepping and living into your why can get uncomfortable. It might not be easy to do. You may have people who challenge you, and because they don't understand what you're doing, why are you changing? Why are you so different? If that's what ends up happening, because they often have expectations of you from their own perceptions and their own needs and their own wants. They want you to be a certain way because that's what they expect. And so sometimes when we start to make changes, or we start to step into our why and really lead with our values and really lead with our authenticity, who we truly are, sometimes people can get confused by that. So it's not necessarily always going to be a comfortable thing to do. And they have a hard time letting go of that. But you can do this. This is, and next month is really about how do you stand by your why? How do you continue, how do you defy some of the things that might come up, or some of the people who might make comments, or, you know, oh, you're changing. I've had that before. You're not the old Michelle. Like, what's going on? Where's the fun Michelle? Or where's the old Michelle that I knew? I've had those comments. And so those are things that, you know, if we want to keep going, we truly believe in what we're doing and who we want to be, then there are things that we can do to kind of make sure that we're solidified and we feel good and strong within that. And so defy is the next part of, and the final part of the Your Why series. And that's coming out next month. And Ignite will be hosting that one as well. And so Aaron will send out, Aaron and Danielle will send out a link to that, or for the event. But otherwise, that's a wrap, folks, for today. If you want to send me an email, feel free. Keep it simple, coaching consulting @gmail.com. The website has a blog, and so there's some, I'm a little biased, I wrote them, some interesting reads on the blog. But also, if you want to subscribe to the Keep It Simple news, like I said, it's a communication that I put out once or twice a month, typically notifying you that there's a new blog, but also with some other like freebies and some coaching offers or promotions or upcoming events, things like that. I promise no spam. I don't like spam myself, so I try not to. I don't like doing it to others because I know how it feels. So I will put some of those. I will put some links in the chat box. So yeah, so what I'll do, Darlene, so Darlene's asking, can you send out the exercises? What I can do is, when Aaron sent out the Zoom link to everybody's email addresses were there. So if you don't mind, I can send out a PDF of the slides from today's presentation, and then the exercises are in there. If you do mind that coming to you, just let me know, or yeah, I don't know what's another way that could work. The only other way, oh, I have a way, just a moment. I have a link, actually. Oh, no. So if I'll put in the subscription. Sorry, technology and me. Here we go. I'm good at it most of the time. Sometimes when I feel a little. So this is the subscription link. So if you'd like to subscribe to Keep It Simple News, there are a couple of freebies that come with that when you do sign up. One is the setting intentions exercise, but it's laid out a little bit differently than the way that it's laid out here. Same process, but looks a little different. And then there's a core values exercise that comes along with that as well. So if you're looking to identify some of your core values, then there's an exercise there. If you'd like to have, if you've already subscribed and would like to have the slide deck, then this is a link that you can use to get the slide deck. I tried it before, it worked. If something happens and it doesn't work, please feel free to email me. Yeah, I think it Does anybody have any questions, any comments? Like I said, I feel like the last hour and 20, I just went blah and said a lot and a fair amount of a bit of time. So any questions or any comments?